Welcome to this session of Microsoft Sentinel, What's New in the Last 6 Months, where we'll showcase some of the new features that we released in the last couple of months. Now, if you are looking for a quick overview of what are the releases that we have published, this will be the right session for you. As mentioned by Jacqueline, my name is Jeremy Tan. I am a product manager based in Sydney from the Microsoft Sentinel Customers Experience Engineering team. Joining me today is Naomi Christis. First, I'll hand over to Naomi.
Thanks, Jeremy, and thanks, Jacqueline, for the introduction. And also welcome everybody to today's session. My name is Naomi Christis. I am based in Belgium, and I am working together with Jeremy on the CXE team for Sentinel. But let's get started and take a look at our agenda for today, shall we? As you probably know, Sentinel has an incredible fast pace for releasing new stuff. And we wanted to run through all the notable changes that have become publicly available in the last few months. So publicly available means all the features that have recently gone into public preview or GA. As you can see, we didn't include an introduction into Sentinel since this session is more focused on updating you on new features. So we made the assumption that you guys, the audience, already have a notion of what Sentinel is, and we will immediately turn our attention over to all the amazing new features that have been published recently. So we have built and structured the deck by assigning different features to different roles. So we have 3 different SOC roles that we are going to explore during this presentation, and attached to each role, the features that would be most interesting for them. The assignment of the responsibilities to those SOC roles, of course, is very subjective, but we kind of use this division for providing some structure during the presentation. So 3 different roles. We have the security architect, the SOC analyst, and SOC engineer. And for each of these roles, we have a couple of responsibilities and features. And to wrap up this session, we will end with a demo. So let's get into it. First up is the security architect. In our presentation, we think of the security architect as the person that takes on the role of architecting Sentinel. So how does the workspace design look like? What kind of measurements should I take to delegate access, for example? What data do I want to bring in and how do I collect it? All these things are the responsibility of a security architect. So let's look at what features we have in store for the architect. So let's start with the content management and acceleration. So this is where you can start your Sentinel journey, or this could also be a great place to discover new content, even if you have been using Sentinel for a while. The goal of content management is to accelerate the Sentinel onboarding with content that is easily discoverable. One of the features in this section is the launch of the new integrated content management capabilities. We have introduced a new list view for the Content Hub and added new bulk lifecycle management features for the solution. So this will help with an easier deployment of the solutions and content at scale. Next up, we have the discovery and deployment of out-of-the-box standalone content in Content Hub. This means content that is not included in solutions. So with this feature, you now have access to all the contributions which are hosted in GitHub repository, and you can centrally manage it in the feature blades from within Content Hub. And what I should actually have started with, we of course also have published a lot of new solutions. We can't possibly just enumerate them all here because we will be here for more than an hour just discussing all the released solutions. But what I can tell you is that the last time I checked, we have more than 250 solutions in the Content Hub, and the team is constantly working on creating and releasing even more artifacts. The only solution I really want to highlight is the SAP Sentinel solution, because it is such a unique solution where we natively import the logs from SAP directly via our own created agent. and we help protect your SAP environment by providing a lot of out-of-the-box artifacts. Now, onto the subject of health. A lot of investments were made to help monitor the health of your Microsoft Sentinel resources. You can turn on health to get insights on the fitness of your system and create notifications so you can be alerted of any failures. Currently, we support health monitoring for data connectors, analytics, playbooks, and automation rules, which will be discussed later in the session, and even incidents, because we added easier auditing capabilities on incidents. For data transformation and normalization, our goal is to help with accessing and using the data in Sentinel. So transformation of logs can be achieved either pre-ingestion or post-ingestion. Post-ingestion is with async. Now, to focus on the pre-ingestion transformation, we released 4 remarkable features, but we only have time to highlight 2 of them. So first off is the capability of pre-ingestion transformation itself. So the pre-ingestion transformation is quite new in the product, and with this feature, you can now filter or modify incoming data before it is sent to Log Analytics workspace. This means that you can remove sensitive data, enrich data, or delete non-essential data to reduce cost. And the final feature for this slide is the modification of the schema for custom tables and standard tables from the user interface itself. So this means that you can add or delete columns from your tables from within the portal. Now, Jeremy, do you want to enlighten us with some of the newest features for data collection?
Sure, thanks, Naomi. Now, let me go through the remaining investments featured areas related to security architects. So I'm going to go through data collections and threat intelligence feature areas. So as you can see, this is a long list. So we won't be able to go through each and every item due to the interest of time. What I would like to highlight under the data collection feature areas are the connectors related to our agent, Agile Monitoring Agent, or AMA. So as you all might know, AMA is our new agents that will replace the existing Microsoft Monitoring Agents. So Microsoft Monitoring Agent MMA is due to deprecated in August 2024. So for the new AMA agents, we have released 2 connectors. The first one is on the Windows DNS events collections. And the next one, where the other one is the Common Event Format Collection, or SEF, which is very important for most of the organization. Now, what I want to highlight is for the Windows DNS event collections, we also provide filtering capabilities. So as you heard Naomi mention earlier, we do have the data transformation features that allows you to perform filtering at the ingestion time. But what these connectors allows you to do is perform filtering at the source level. Next, let's talk about some of the features related to threat intelligence. So the first one I want to highlight is the capabilities to add TI from incidents and investigation graph. As you can see from the screenshot, a SOC Analyst can add a TI to our threat intelligence repository directly in the investigation graph portal. So that means when a SOC Analyst is performing investigation, whenever the SOC Analyst found that there is an entity that is determined to be malicious, he and she can add that entity to TI directly with a single click. Now, the same approach can be performed within our new incident page as well, as you can see over here. So under the entity tabs, an analyst can click on an entity which might be malicious and select the options of add to TI. Next is the features of importing TI via a flag file. Now, there might be some scenario where TI would be shared amongst the organizations or internally through a flag file such as CSV. So with this feature, an analyst can import CSV file into the TI directly in the threat intelligence plane. Next, Naomi, do you want to go through some of the features around SOC Analyst role?
Yeah, thanks. So we have now the SOC Analyst or Manager. So they are normally the people that handle the triaging of incidents on a daily basis, right? So they will spend the majority of time looking at the Sentinel user interface, Sentinel overview page, and investigating the Sentinel incidents. So let's take a look at the features. So these past few months, we really focused on providing the full life cycle management of your security incidents inside Sentinel. We wanted to work on a great investigation experience that is intuitive and flexible, and with the right context, always readily available. Before diving into the most interesting features for this section, I also want to encourage you to take a look at the webinar our colleague Theander did last week on the new investigation experience. It is a very demo-rich session where he goes through the new incident triage and investigation experience. But we will also take some time now during this webinar to talk about the new features that will help reduce the time needed to triage and investigate the incidents. So first up, as you can see, we modernized the overview page. The overview page is the first page you will see when accessing your Sentinel workspace, and here you immediately get an overview of what's happening in your environment. Straight away, you already get an idea of the security posture of your organization. Now, if we want to take a closer look at all the incidents in our system and start investigating them, we can use the new investigation experience. A lot of new features and enhancements have been introduced into the new incident page design, and one of these new features is the top insights. So top insights can be very useful for analysts when they are investigating incidents, because top insights will highlight the most relevant entity insights. The highlights are selected by our own Microsoft security experts, and they can give you some insights on, for example, UBA, or for example, on what actions that are performed by accounts which relate to this incident. The cool thing is that also each of these insights has a link which you can select to open the underlying query so that you can further investigate them. Now, onto the similar instance. We added a new tab in the instance details page, which shows up to 20 other incidents sorted in order of similarity. So those similar incidents are the incidents that resemble the incident that you are currently investigating. This way you can find out if other similar incidents have happened before, or maybe are happening even at this very moment. You could, for example, look into a similar incident and see all the tasks for that other similar incident. So incident tasks is actually also one of the new features that we introduced. So we introduced tasks to help create a way of standardizing the procedures in your Sentinel environment. So let me get to the next screenshot. Yeah. And then if you provide like a task list, then you can provide a standard, and then you make an effort to formalize the list of tasks for an analyst. And if you have this formalization, then you can ensure that incidents are treated the same way by all analysts. So this will help run your SOC more smoothly and more consistently. So analysts will have, thanks to the tasks, a kind of a manual on what to do, and they can take advantage of experience of other colleagues. And then the last one we want to highlight that relates to incidents directly is the creation and deletion of incidents. With the manual incident creation feature, analysts can now create an incident manually in the Sentinel portal. So this can be useful if you need to create an incident that cannot originate from a log. So for example, Someone might witness suspicious activity, like an employee using someone else's login credentials. And then the person witnessing this activity, they might call the SOC to report the activity. Now, with the creation of incidents, you can now create an incident in Sentinel so that you can make sure that this activity is followed up on and that you can manage and monitor that account that might have been stolen. And if an incident was mistakenly logged, or if there's an exact duplicate of another incident, it can also now be deleted using the new delete incident option. Deleting is possible for a single incident or as a bulk action from the grid. Now back to you, Jeremy.
Sure, thanks, Naomi. Now I'll talk about the anomalies and fusions, feature areas, and also threat huntings. Just a reminder that each and every item that you see here, there's a link that will link to our documentation. So once this, the deck is published, you could just grab the content and review each and every new features yourself. Now, let's talk about the features area under anomalies and fusion. So the first one I want to highlight is the entity anomaly rules. So these are the rules related to UEBA anomalies detections, whereby it's fully integrated with UEBA. So whenever there's any anomalies or unusual behaviors detected by the rules, the information will surface in the entity page and also in the anomalies table. Now, next, also related to anomaly, we have the customizable machine learning based anomaly that already went into GA. So when we talk about machine learning, very often it seems like a black box, but we make it customizable so that you can always customize those anomalies according to your environment's need. Now, next up, related to threat huntings, we have allows the customized hunting queries to integrate with MITRE ATT&CK tactics and techniques. So when you create a custom hunting queries, you can select the relevant MITRE tactics and techniques. So that's easier for you to perform filtering, also for categorizations in your hunting page. And followed by the support of the entity mapping in the hunting queries. So similar to the MITRE ATT&CK support, when you create a new custom hunting queries, you can map the entity in the query itself. Now, the entity that we mapped will be carried over in bookmarks as well, so that whenever you are performing a proactive hunting, and sometimes you might have the need to add bookmarks on certain records, the entity mapping will be carried over as well. Now, back to you, Naomi, to walk us through on the features related to SOC Engineer.
Thanks. So for our last section, we look at the SOC Engineer. A SOC Engineer is typically the role that is fulfilled when we are in need of authoring artifacts. So for example, the creation of detection rules, workbooks, playbooks, and actually anything that is related to building artifacts. So let's look at the features. First off, I want to start by saying assigning all the subsections and their features to one specific security role was not always as easy. We mentioned it already in the beginning, but it's sometimes hard to find where which section belongs to. And with the retention section, you might debate that these features are more suited for the security architect, because specifying the retention policy and deciding on where to store the logs for how long can be decided, for example, by the security architect. But implementing the policies can be done, for example, by the SOC engineer. But let's not dwell too long on who needs the features the most and just look into the retention options. As you might know, the first 90 days of data retention is free in Sentinel. Afterwards, you can decide to keep your data in hot storage, or you can move the older data, which you might only use like sporadically, to cold storage. This cold storage are the archived logs. archived logs store the data at a reduced cost in log analytics. And if you need to re-examine those archived logs, you can easily restore them and use them again in your queries and investigations. So by moving your data to archive, you can save costs and still have the logs readily available. Another way of reducing cost is by using basic logs. Basic logs are a new pricing tier for Azure Log Analytics, which lets you save on the cost of ingestion and storing high volume verbose logs. You would normally use the basic log tier for logs that are meant for debugging, troubleshooting, and auditing, because you can't use the basic logs for analytics and alerts. And to help you search across all the different types of logs we just mentioned, we introduced the search job. You can look for a certain key item in a specific table, and the search will run on data that is in the analytic tier, the basic tier, and also the archive tier. So the result of the search job will then be stored in a temporary table, and this makes it also very easy to reference the results even after the search job has completed. What we all can agree on is that the creation of analytics is normally a task for the SOC engineer, right? So now what improvements do I want to highlight in this area? I want to focus on the near real-time rules. So these rules offer a faster detection time, which also implies that you can get shorter response times, right? So NRT rules will give you the ability to detect threats faster, since these rules run in intervals with only a minute apart. We released some out-of-the-box near real-time rules to help you create those new detection rules, and these rule templates are a good starting point to start using the NRT rules, and of course they can be customized to your needs. Now, Jeremy, I promised in the beginning some explanation about health monitoring on automation. Do you want to elaborate on this? And maybe I see also highlight some new features from UBA?
Sure, thanks, Naomi. Certainly. Now, just to continue the investment that we made around the SOC engineer role, so particularly around UEBA and automation features, I'll highlight some of the features in these two features areas. So the first one under UEBA would be the new UEBA Essential Solutions that we released a few months ago. Now, within these solutions, we have added 23 new hunting queries related to UEBA. So with this, SOC analysts can proactively perform hunting for any abnormal behavioral activities. Next, regarding automations, again, it's a long list, but I'm gonna pick 3 of the items to discuss. So the first one is the newly added conditions for automation rules. So as you can see from the screenshots, previously we only have the and conditions under the automation rules, but we have added all conditions to make it more flexible. So you could define a logic, something like this, to make it more flexible and suitable for your environment. Next, which is automation, something that Naomi has briefly mentioned earlier. So for automations, we have allowed the health of the automation rules to be logged in a table called Sentinel Health Table. As you can see from the screenshot, this is the settings of the configurations. But we have also accompanied workbooks to help you visualize the data that we capture from health. So with the workbooks, you'll be easily navigate and identify any automation rules which are unhealthy. Next, which is the one of the important features, and it works seamlessly with our new incident page, which is the ability to run playbooks on demand based on entity. So this is based on a new trigger that we have called entity trigger. So in the past, if you would like to perform certain actions, right? Let's say you have an instance, and within the instance, you have multiple entity type, And if you only want to perform actions on a specific entity type, you would need to embed that kind of logic into your playbooks. But with this new feature, you can create playbooks specifically to a specific entity type. So for example, IP address, right? So, and once that playbooks have been created, within the new incident page, you can highlight that specific entity type and select run playbooks. Then you'll be able to select the playbooks that you created for that specific entity type. Now, the same experience is also available in the investigation graph. You notice that this behavior is also similar to the add to TI capability, so which will allow you to select an entity, and now you could run a playbooks select a run playbook options within this investigation graph as well. Well, I think that's a lot of features to digest. So next, let's have some demo. So as mentioned at the beginning, we will select some of the features that we cover, and we will show them in demo, so that you know it's easier for you to understand or visualize how these features work. Now, in order to showcase the demo, we have compiled 2 use cases to showcase. So let's look at the first use case. Now, for the first use case, is mainly for enablement and accelerations. So with this, we have 2 requirements that an organization would like to address. So the first requirement is to have the ability to deploy and manage Sentinel content at scale, whereas the second requirement is to have the ability to determine rules which are running fine, and also they would like to get notified when a rules threshold is being modified. So these requirements are usually, are common requirements coming from security architects and SOC engineer. And the features that we'll use for showcasing would be the content enablement and lifecycle management for solutions, and also analytics, health, and audit. Just want to highlight that for analytics, health, and audit. So this feature is still not yet public, so we will be releasing this in next 2 to 3 weeks, but we would like to give you an early preview. Now, Naomi, do you want to show us how to address the first requirement?
Yeah. So first up in the use case is the content enablement, as Jeremy mentioned. So in our scenario, we are starting from an existing workspace where we want to take a look at the new solutions or solutions that needs updating. As we already told you guys during the presentation, Content Hub is the right place to start out your Sentinel journey, since this is a spot where you can discover all the out-of-the-box artifacts that might be interesting for your environment. But it is also the best place to check in on a regular cadence to see what new solutions have been released and which artifacts can be updated. So we went to Content Hub in this environment, and you see that there are already 27 solutions installed, and actually 17 of those installed solutions can be updated. So let's get into the list view, which I prefer, because then you have a nice overview of everything that is possible. So what is already installed in your environment, it's marked with a status icon, which solutions need updating, who is providing and supporting the solution, and if it's a solution or a standalone artifact. So I like this incident list view also because then you can bulk manage things. So first of all, let's only look at all the content that needs an update. So this is already installed content and we might need to update this. So let's say we want to update all of them. Then we can bulk update them, just selecting all of them and then just clicking on install update. Very easy, right? So when I would install it, then we would change some artifacts and possibly some rules that are working in our environment because we update the solutions. Now, can we check somewhere what has changed by updating the solutions, Jeremy?
Sure, certainly, Naomi. Now, just to recap on the use case. So the second requirement of the use case is the organization would like to make sure that the rules is running fine, right? So whenever if there's any rule running failures, they want to be aware of. And secondly, if let's say if anyone modify a content such as rule, right, they would like to get notified as well. So let me show you how to address these requirements. So first of all, I have prepared a couple of KQL query. So first, I would like to show you the new features that I mentioned earlier, which is the audit feature for analytics. So for any activity to perform on analytics rule will be logged into a new table called Sentinel audit table. So let me just run this query and show you how the records will look like. Now, first of all, let me just pick one of the sample data. Now, first of all, you can see that you get all the information such as the name of the rule, what's the operations that been performed. So in this instance, the activity of create or update analytics rule has been performed. You can see what's the status. You can even find out what is the type of the rule that's been modified. For example, it is a schedule rule or is this a near real-time rule. And you find additional information under the extended property fields. So for example, the caller IP address and the caller name, who performed that, what was the original states, and what was the new or updated states of that specific rule. So you can see that there is a lot of information available for the SOC analyst to review. And just to address the use case of the organization would like to know if, let's say, a rule has been modified, whereas the thresholds have been updated, right? So we could use queries such as this one. So let me just run this, and you'll be able to filter out any activities with the trigger thresholds being updated. So with this, because this is a KQL query, you could just grab this query and create a schedule and analytics rule to monitor all these update or changes. Now, besides the audit, another requirement is to ensure that the rule are running fine, right? If there's any rule that's failed to run, they would like to find out as well. So with that, we will be using the Sentinel health table. So you might be aware that previously we have the data connector health, right? And I also mentioned about the automation health as well. The next is coming is the analytics rule health. So for analytics rule, at each interval that the rule runs, there will be a health records being logged in the Sentinel health table. So this is the sample data, as you can see. You'll be able to find out what's the rule name, what is the running status. You have the descriptions and reason. So let's take this as example. You'll be able to find out that the rule has executed successfully, but there wasn't any alerts generated because the thresholds was not reached, right? So you have this kind of information. Now, I just want to highlight another use case, which is the ability to identify the rule which has been auto disabled. Now, for Sentinel, we have a mechanism in our back end to check if, let's say, a rule has been running failure. So let's say, for example, someone created a rule to monitor a table, right, or a data source. But sometimes down the road, the table might have been removed, and obviously the rule will run into failure. Now, with that, we have a mechanism in place that will auto disable for this kind of scenario. So that, as you can see in this example, I have a rule called test. I created to run against the table, but after a while, I removed the table and my rule got auto disabled. So what I can do is, I can use the health data. I can create a rule to monitor any rule that has been auto disabled by using this query. As you can see, just a simple query to check whether or not there's a reason under the reason field with the analytics rule is disabled. And just want to show you part of the new features that we released on analytics is the ability to perform the dynamic alert properties. So over here, as you can see in the alert name description, I have specified a dynamic property, right, from the result. But we have also added so all the properties, right, available for you to specify. If let's say if you want to override any of the alert property, you'll be able to do that today. All right, and this is the sample alerts that's been triggered with the auto disable rule. And just want to let you have a quick look how this it looks like. And again, this is our new incident experience, and you'll be able to find out, which rule has been auto disabled, by looking at entity. And in my test rule, I have even added custom detail to provide more information. All right, so looks like we have addressed the first use case. So as promised, we have prepared 2 use cases. So let me bring up the deck to talk about the second use case. Naomi, do you want to walk us through with the second use case?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So for the second use case, we want to focus on TI and the new investigation experience. So we want to center this use case on 2 requirements. The first requirement that we want to address is the Microsoft Threat Intelligence and how it can help with detections. Jeremy and I have noticed that quite often customers are wanting to include TI, but do not know where to start. So threat intelligence indicators can help SOC analysts to make well-informed decisions when investigating incidents and suspicious events in their environment. So when you know that a certain IP is a suspicious IP, or that a certain URL is actually originating from a malicious domain, then you can take the appropriate actions to make sure these indicators are flagged in your environment. But as I just mentioned, customers are wondering what TI platform they want to use. And Microsoft has their own TI information, and Jeremy will show in a bit where you can start and how to use it. And for the second requirement, we want to showcase how you can easily manage and add certain discovered indicators so that you can easily use them in further investigations. So the features that relate to this use case are mentioned on the left. So we will look into the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Analytics. We will also showcase how you can use search as an added bonus and run some playbooks on demand on entities, and then focus again on threat intelligence for the bulk tagging and deleting, for example, and how you can add TI from incident and investigation graphs. But I think it's better if we just start showing the use case. Don't you agree, Jeremy?
Sure, absolutely. So let me showcase how to address the first requirements. All right, so as Naomi mentioned, one of the common questions from customer would be, especially customers who are new to Sentinel, they will be wondering, are there any out-of-the-box TI provided by Microsoft? Maybe sometimes customer might not have any TI vendor, right, in their environment. Or maybe customer already have TI vendors, but they are looking for something more, right? And they are curious to know what are provided out of the box by Microsoft. Now, with that, I just want to showcase we have released a feature called Microsoft Threat Intelligence Analytics. So if you go to the rule templates, so you'll be able to find this rule. So this rule will actually match the data that ingested by customer. If they found that there's any IOC that we match with the threat intelligence repository of Microsoft, and incidents will be generated, and the associate IOC will get ingested into the threat intelligence table. Now, for this particular analytics, currently it supports 3 data sources. The first one is common event format, or CEF. The second one is DNS. So under DNS, we support DNS events and DNS inventory tables. And the third one would be the syslog data types. And the IOC types that this analytics rule supported are the domain names, the IP address, and also URL. Now we'll be adding more supports of IOC types in the future. So once this has been enabled, whenever there's any matching, as I mentioned, out of these data sources that ingested by customer, whenever there is any matching, let's say, for example, the IP or domain names against our Microsoft Threat Intelligence, and incidents will get created. So something that looks like this, right? For example, this particular IP address found to be malicious, which match our repository. Now, I also want to highlight that we also recently added an integration with Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence for this specific feature. So as you can see, for this particular instance, they were a match of the domain names, right, against the Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence repository. So there will be accompanying articles, as you can see. So if you click on the link, you'll be able to find out more details by reading the articles. And as I mentioned, if you look at the incidents, you'll be able to find out the IOC and the entity, right? So the entity will be added into the threat intelligence repository. So if I check for this particular entity under threat intelligence plate, I'll be able to find the same IOC, right, being added into the threat intelligence table. So this is for the first requirements of the second use case. Naomi, do you want to walk us through with the second requirement?
Yeah. Thanks, Jeremy, by the way, for the excellent demo. Now, I want you to imagine that we have 2 different workspaces. So the workspace that Jeremy just showed, and like, for example, another one in China. Now, Jeremy just found a malicious indicator, right? It is in one of our workspaces. It might be in the US, and we just want to make sure that this same threat is not present in our other workspace. So I want to look if this threat indicator is present in the other one. So we move to the other location, our second workspace, and I can use the search functionality because I want to look through all the logs, so the archived logs and the active logs, just to make sure that TI that Jeremy found is not active. And I know, for example, that in this workspace, we mainly ingest logs via a collector. So for this use case, I will search only on the table common security log, and we will look for that indicator. So let's look for it like this. and we can start the search. Now you see now that it's only a normal search, but we will specify that we want a more extended search job that ranges, for example, for the past 2 years. For the past 2 years, so then it will take a longer time, and then we start searching. Now, as you can see, we need to specify the search table in which the results will be ingested into. As I mentioned during the feature overview, we will create a new table with all the results. So I will just say webinar test and then start running the search job. Let's not wait for this search to be completed. We might come back to this later, but it will take a while. And you can see that it starts running the job and it will start creating the table. Now, when we were investigating the incident with Microsoft Defender for TI, so this one, we also looked at some incidents that happened around this time frame to see if there's something interesting. And we found this one, the sign-in activity from suspicious users. So this one is an interesting one because there are some alerts and a lot of entities are related to this incident. So we want to take a closer look. So we go into and watch the full details, and then we can see the timeline as usual. A lot of entities are mentioned over here, so all IPs, which spikes our interest because there are a lot of sign-in activities then from this IP. And then one of the things we can take a look at is, for example, the similar incidents. So we might want to figure out if this attack might be part of a bigger attack scenario, or we just might want to learn how one of our colleagues managed such a similar incident. And normally this one, we see that the author, let's see if I can change the size. No, but this one I know because I prepared this session. We know that this one has an author, so an owner to this incident. And now I can, for example, take a look how the other analysts have worked on this incident. So we could take a look in the activity log, because as I mentioned in the beginning, we have now some auditing running on incidents, so we can see what has happened. But what's also interesting is the tasks view. So we could take a look and see what the other analyst has performed. It seems that he added some checklists that he wanted to confirm. By the way, task can also be added via automation rules, but that's not in the scope of this use case. And we also see that the analyst has completed one task, and that is collecting all the suspicious IPs. Because as mentioned, there are a lot of entities that are IPs. So let's go into the investigation graph to have like an overview of how it's all connected. And if you see this, then it's quite scary, right? So a lot of IPs and a lot of alerts are related to this incident. So we could take a look at the timeline, see which alert comes first and how it all relates to each other. But let's assume that, for example, we think that these IPs are all suspicious and we want to track them. So we could, from this investigation graph, add the IPs to the TI, for example, so that we can immediately have other rules working on it, or we can run a playbook from this view on those entities. But as you can see, there are a lot of IPs mentioned over here, so I don't want to go over them one by one and adding them one by one to TI. And I remembered that the analyst that was working on this incident has collected the suspicious IPs. So I can take a phone call, can call them, and I can ask, do you have that list? And if, for example, they have a nice overview list, just in a file, we can go to Threat Intelligence Blade and just import them by using a file, for example. So it will be easier to just import all the IPs that we have collected and have investigated, and maybe have checked if they are malicious, and then we can just import them via flat file. So I think that wraps up this use case. Jeremy, do you have anything to add, or?
Thank you, Naomi, for the great demo. So yeah, I think we have successfully addressed both our use cases. Let me bring up the last slides, and hopefully everyone you will find these sessions useful. Feel free to grab the deck after the sessions. As I mentioned, all the links to the documentations are embedded in the deck. And with that, Jacqueline, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I did want to follow up since we have just a few moments. There was an unanswered question that we have in the chat. So by default, are Sentinel Audit Table and Sentinel Health Table available, or do people need to enable or create something in configuration?
Sure, I can take that. So by default, it's not enabled. So there is a settings under Sentinel that you need to check a specific checkbox for the workflows, such as automation, for example, and analytics will be appear once it's available. So if you are familiar with how to enable the data collector and automation workflow for health, so it will be the same approach.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And I think we had most questions answered in the chat. Maybe if you want to do a quick, there were a few comments about updating analytic rules. So I don't know if you want to maybe do a brief recap of that content, or I'm not sure how long that might take. So.
Is that the one that Naomi demo earlier?
Yeah, there were a few questions about updating analytic rules. So I don't know if that's of help to the audience to hear a little bit more of elaboration on. No.
Updating the rules via Content Hub, or?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And is there anything specific that the audience wants to know, or should I show it again?
Let me go ahead and just pull up a question specifically. Oh, it looks like it actually got answered in the chat, so I think we're good to go on that one.
Okay, cool.
Okay, thanks. All right, so thank you, Jeremy and Naomi, for today's webinar. Thank you to the rest of the team who helped to answer all the questions that came in. We had tons of them throughout. But most of all, I want to thank all of the attendees for being a part of our community and for joining us on today's webinar. In case we missed your question, or if you have additional questions, you can visit us on our Azure Sentinel forum at aka.ms/Azure Sentinel Community. I'd also like to remind the listeners that the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements is to join our public community at aka.ms/security community. And lastly, we'd love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars. So please take a minute to submit your webinar feedback at aka.ms/security webinar feedback. Thank you all for being with us today, and we hope to see you next time. Goodbye.